Steve, there's no deep state.
No.
Come on, Steve.
No.
There's no deep state.
What is the deep state?
Okay, so what do you think when you think about what World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab is doing and his campaign Build Back Better being the same campaign, identical word as Biden's? What do you think about when you see what some of these ESG guys are doing? You know, you got these, State Street, Vanguard, Larry Fink, BlackRock. They own all these stocks, and these 88% of S&P 500 top 3 shareholders is their institutional money. And they're imposing their power over these CEOs to do what they need to do for, And now recently they're stepping away from it.
Patrick Bet-David brought on this woke idiot onto the PBD Podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel that tried to tell Patrick Bet-David to his face that the deep state is not real and how much he hates Donald Trump. And of course, as anyone with common sense would, Patrick Bet-David absolutely unloaded on him for these ridiculous statements like Patrick Bet-David does best. Like I said, anybody would see this as a ridiculous statement, but very few people can actually do what Patrick Bet-David did right here and just meticulously tear this guy's arguments and his talking points to shreds. Let's get into this clip here where Patrick Bet-David has to confront this woke idiot on the PBD Podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel.
And either way, both sides, the American people get this. They completely intuitively understand it's all bullshit. Whether it's Menendez in the old country, Dianne Feinstein passed away right before we came on air. I was actually talking to someone about this yesterday, right? Like the notion, this person who's a legitimately important figure, right, in American political history for women, how she came to power, completely stripped of her dignity in the last 5 years of her service, that this is what she'll be remembered for, is sitting up there with no faculties, no personal agency. So we have a massive problem. You have a belligerence in the media that you see assert itself every time someone says, well, 80% of the country doesn't want Trump or Biden. So there's a lot of brokenness. I understand it. But the issue with Trump that's front and center, it has to be, are the intimations towards violence, towards chaos, and the assassination baiting of a guy who spent his entire career wearing the cloth of the
quick follow-up. It would seem to me your biggest issue would be people clinging to power. Let me explain. Trump first and foremost, but you named names. You named Dianne Feinstein, clinging to power. She was clearly a vegetable, but she wouldn't step down. Bob Menendez, clearly corrupt, clinging to power, right? Mitch McConnell, 80 years old, can't even function, clinging to power. Your biggest fear is Donald Trump clinging to power. You used the George Washington example. He's not King George. He's not Julius Caesar. Go deep, go dark here for a second. He clings to power. Let's say he actually wins or even doesn't win this next election, but clings to power, assumes he wins. How dark could it possibly get? What's your biggest fear?
There's a plan. It's on the table by elements at the Claremont Institute that seek to really dissolve the functioning of the government, the deep state, as they call it, within 6 months. There is no deep state. There's dysfunction. There's bureaucracy.
Dude, I feel like this guy is struggling to even say that statement with a straight face. Did you see how much he stuttered? And you could see a smile. Like, he almost cracked a smile after he said there is no deep state. Anytime, if anybody ever says this statement, I'm immediately throwing out every other thing that you tell me, because I know that you're an agent of that. You're an agent of the deep state. You have to be. You're either an absolute idiot or you're an agent of them. You're getting paid in some way to say something like this. You're benefiting in some way to say something like this. There's no way. There's no way that any rational thinking, well connected to what's going on human would ever say and mean that there is no deep state. That would never happen. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It doesn't make any sense. And look, we're at a point now where people have been saying that Donald Trump is this huge threat to democracy for so long. And then, there's all these reports coming out recently about how Donald Trump is planning a way to capture a third term. It's like, if they're going to make up all this stuff anyway, and they're going to call you a threat to democracy, they're going to say that you're going to do all this stuff, you might as well just do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you might as well just go for it. They're going to say that you're doing it anyway. They're going to prosecute you as if you're doing it anyway. If you're going to get all the negatives of doing something with none of the positives, you might as well just go after the positives too. Just go take it, man. Go take a third term. I don't mind. Go ahead and do it. I don't know how the hell you're going to do that. And I would like for some of the reporters who are saying that he's going to do that to come out and tell us what his plan is to do it, because I'm sure he doesn't even know either. But hey, man, go for it. I think it'd be fun.
There's inefficiency.
Steve, there's no deep state.
No.
Come on, Steve.
No.
There's no deep state.
What is the deep state?
Okay, so what do you think when you think about what World Economic Forum Klaus Schwab is doing and his campaign Build Back Better being the same campaign, identical word as Biden's? What do you think about when you see what some of these ESG guys are doing? You got these, State Street, Vanguard, Larry Fink, BlackRock. They own all these stocks, and these 88% of S&P 500 top 3 shareholders is their institutional money. And they're imposing their power over these CEOs to do what they need to do for, And now recently they're stepping away from it. There's a lot of people today that I know when you're sitting here going through some of this stuff, and I want to listen to you because I want to know where your motive is. I want to know where your frustration lies. And, I want to comment on a few of these things and then, give a question back to you. You said Trump being, he was raised with a father with money. His father bailed him out, gave him money and all this other stuff, right? I saw kids who grew up poor, and I saw kids who grew up with money. The kids that grew up with money had more temptations to do stupid things than the kids who grew up poor. Now, what do I mean by this? They're spoiled brats. They're annoying. They're obnoxious. They're always getting bailed out. They never get suspended. If they do, the dad comes in and buys it out. You're not going to see a kid with a rich dad getting, what's the word, not suspended, when you're getting kicked out of school, expelled. It's just not going to happen, right? You're going to get these things. So the way I see it with Trump is, here's a guy that had access to all the drugs, anything he ever wanted to do. He had access to all the alcohol, anything he wanted to do. He had access to all of it. And you mean to tell me this guy never did drugs? He never did alcohol? And with all the temptations of the money that his dad had, he takes whatever the dad gave him, whether it's nothing, $1 million, or $14 million. I've heard all these 3 numbers, right? Even if it's the $14 million that his dad gave him, you take that $14 million and you turn it into $2 billion, $3 billion, whatever the number is. Democrats will say it's closer to $2 billion. Some will say it's $3 billion. Let's say $2 billion, okay? You do that? How many kids do that? Not a lot of them. It's not easy to do. So for me, I understand the establishment thing, and then to come to today when you said something about, this guy got up on stage and he said, the only way the election will be accurate is if I win, right? Not if I lose. If I lose, the election is a fraud and da-da-da-da. Okay, fine, cool. Then the hypocrisy comes out is if he only said it and that was the issue, okay, what are you doing? Can't be saying something like this. Do you know how many videos were taken down for repeating what Hillary Clinton said in 2016, that the election was rigged? You know how many videos were taken down? 0. YouTube didn't take down any videos that they said 2016 election was rigged and Russia collusion. 0 videos. They all stayed up. Why? So think about the voter who... you're like, this voter, right? This voter is kind of like,
that's great points by Patrick Bet David, but I think an even better point would just be what Zuckerberg, was it Zuckerberg? I'm pretty sure it was Zuckerberg. Yeah, it was Zuckerberg that came out and said that he was, the FBI or whoever approached him. One of the agencies approached him as, the owner of Meta, Facebook, whatever, and said to censor certain stories, and they all leaned right wing. The Twitter files, there wasn't anything super massive that came out in the Twitter files, but we kind of just confirmed a lot of things that we already knew, in that they were also censoring the the laptop story and other things, only skewing right wing, censoring stories that made Joe Biden, that made the left wing, that made the Democrats look bad. If that's not a deep state at work, then I don't know what is. And then, I mean, there's so many signs, man. I could list them off all day. You guys have heard them all before, but there's so many signs of a deep state at work. There's so many. Patrick Bet-David just did a great job at explaining to this guy, but I have a very strong feeling that no matter how much, in plain English, no matter how much is laid in front of this guy by Patrick Bet-David or anyone else, he's never going to admit the fact that he believes in it, because he is probably benefiting off of the existence of it, you know. And maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, but that seems to be the vibe that I'm getting here.
But F you, okay? You want to do this? I don't like seeing people being taken advantage of. That voter is sitting there and saying, I'm sorry, dude. I voted for, let's just say a person says that they voted for Hillary, okay? But she said the same thing Trump said. 3.5 years later, she funded it, and now we're supposed to sit there and say he's the bad character, not her? You want me to believe that? I think there's a big community as well. I guess what I want to bring back to you is, you know how typically it's like Republican versus Democrat? Okay, great. Then sometimes it's liberal policies versus conservative policies. Great. And then sometimes it's, you know, anti-establishment versus establishment, right? And you said earlier when Trump was running, what Trump was able to do is bring public issues that nobody was talking about, the drug issue or the border issue. Nobody was thinking about that. Boom, he put it front and center. Oh, damn, this is really an issue, right? He made a non-talked about issue, a talked about issue. Then we're all looking at it saying, this guy's right. Let's build a wall. No one ever talked about building a wall. Let's build a wall. Why shouldn't we build a wall? We never thought about this. We should do this.
Yeah, he's done a lot of things that in hindsight, in retrospect, just seems like easy things, like common sense things to do. I remember the night that he got elected, or maybe it was a day following the election, he released a video where he's like, we're going to do this celebration of America in Iowa, right? He's like, we're going to do this celebration of America. And like, it's going to be, you know, you're going to have every single state is going to be represented. They're each going to have their own booth where you can enjoy the cultures from each different state. Every single state will have an opportunity to be there. And it's just going to be a general celebration of America. It's like, dude, that's so genius. It's so common sense to do, but only Donald Trump thought to do it. And then there's the wall, there's the changing the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, little petty things like that. But it kind of just makes you smile. You know, if you're an American who actually likes living in America, which if we're being real, everybody should. If you're well-traveled, you would know that you're very lucky to live here. And if you just get a little bit educated on the people that die every day trying to enter the country, you'd probably be very grateful that you got to be, you know, born here or be a citizen. But it's just those little things that people who are proud to be American get to just smirk at. It's like, yeah, that's cool. You know, as much as it's meaningless to change the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, it's just like, you know what? Cool. Yeah, let's do that. You know, let me know in the comments what you guys think about Patrick Bet-David absolutely schooling this guy who said that there's no deep state and how much he hates Donald Trump. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about Patrick Bet-David versus this woke idiot here live on the PBD Podcast and the Valuetainment YouTube channel.